My wife put the house in her sister's name, then tried to divorce me. When I tell people that's how my 5-year marriage ended, they usually blink a few times and ask if I'm joking. I wish I were. My name's Toby. I'm 34, work in supply chain management for a mid-size manufacturing company, and until recently, I thought I was living a pretty stable, boring, but safe, suburban life. I married Claire 5 years ago, after dating her for almost 2. She was magnetic. The kind of woman who made rooms tilt when she walked in. Smart, witty, stunning. The kind of person who always seemed like she had a plan. Our friends said we balanced each other out. I was quiet, grounded, maybe even a little too serious. She was spontaneous and ambitious, always talking about our future like it was some kind of joint startup project. I loved her for that. I believed in her. After we got married, we moved into a 2-story house just outside Atlanta. Nothing fancy, we weren't rich, but it was ours. At least I thought it was. We bought it 3 years into the marriage, and I remember feeling proud walking through those empty rooms with Claire. Imagining our future kids running down the hallway, or us having late-night arguments in the kitchen about which movie to watch. You know, the silly domestic stuff. Claire worked in event planning. That meant weird hours, stress, and constantly dealing with clients who thought their 3rd wedding was the most important day in the universe. I tried to be supportive. I cooked when she was late. I did most of the yard work, handled bills, tried not to nag. That was just who I was, not the type to pick fights. At first, we were happy, really. Sunday morning pancakes, road trips, arguments over IKEA furniture assembly. The works. We even talked about kids. Well, I talked. Claire kept saying, "Let's wait just a little longer. I'm not quite ready yet." I didn't push. I thought I was being respectful. But about 6 months ago, something shifted. Claire started coming home later. First, it was traffic. Then it was last-minute client crises. Then, she stopped giving reasons at all. Her phone started living face down. She got more defensive, more tired, emotionally. I asked her once, gently, "Is everything okay?" And she sighed like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. "I'm just tired, Toby. Don't make this a thing." I didn't want to make it a thing, but it already was. She started pulling away, from conversations, from touch, from plans. I'd suggest a weekend getaway, and she'd say, "I need time to think." I'd offer to cook dinner, and she'd say she'd already eaten. One night I found her sitting in the dark in our bedroom, not crying, not talking. Just sitting. When I asked if she wanted to talk, she looked at me like I was a stranger crashing her Airbnb. That was 2 weeks before she sat me down at the kitchen table and said she was filing for divorce. No lead up, no therapy talk, no let's take a break. Just a calm, measured, "I think we've grown apart. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The papers are coming next week." My first instinct? Numbness, like someone had hit mute on the world. Then came confusion. Then anger. But not the screaming, plate-throwing kind. Just a deep, hollow ache. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were okay. I'd been trying. I'd been there. She wasn't emotional. She didn't cry. She said she hoped we could handle this like adults. I asked her if there was someone else. She said no. I asked if she was unhappy. She said, "Not unhappy. Just done. Just done." I spent the next few nights on the couch, scrolling through our wedding photos on my phone like an idiot. I kept wondering what I missed. Was I too boring? Too quiet? Too me? I went to work, came home, sat in a house that already felt empty, even with Claire still there, wandering silently from room to room like a ghost with a suitcase. But nothing could have prepared me for what I'd learn next. Because you see, the house we lived in, the one I helped finance, renovate, care for, it wasn't ours anymore. It hadn't been for a month. Claire had quietly transferred the deed into her sister Haley's name. And she did it right before she told me she wanted a divorce. I didn't go to a lawyer right away. At first, I was still processing everything. The sudden divorce, the emotional distance, the eerie quiet of a house that felt less and less like home. But after a week of sleeping on the couch and pretending things were normal at work, I realized I had to get ahead of whatever Claire was doing. I booked a consultation with a local family attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Marla Givens. Her office was tucked between a smoothie bar and a vape shop. Not exactly the setting for high drama, but I was too stressed to care. Marla greeted me with a firm handshake and a clipboard of forms. She had that sharp, seen-it-all energy, the kind of person who could spot a lie before you even opened your mouth. I liked her immediately. "So," she said, clicking her pen. "Tell me what's going on." I explained everything. The marriage, the house, the sudden divorce filing. I told her how Claire had been distant, how she'd dropped the bomb and expected everything to go smoothly. I said I didn't want a war, just fairness. We'd built this life together, and I figured, worst case, we'd split things 50-50ths. Marla nodded slowly. "And the house, you bought it together?" "Yes," I said. "Well, we both lived there. I paid the mortgage, property taxes, home insurance. I even remodeled the kitchen myself last year." She picked the backsplash. "I did the labor." Marla raised an eyebrow. "Whose name is on the deed?" "Both of ours," I said automatically. She spun her monitor toward me. "Let's check anyway." I watched as she navigated through the Fulton County Public Records site. My stomach was tight, but I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I was still clinging to the belief that Claire had just changed, that she wanted out, but wouldn't try to screw me over. Marla squinted at the screen, then scrolled, then frowned. "Do you recognize this name?" she asked, turning the screen toward me again. "Haley McConnell, Claire's sister." I blinked. "That's Claire's sister, but why is her name on the deed?" Marla tapped her pen on the desk. "It was transferred last month, via quitclaim deed. Claire signed the house over to her sister. No sale price listed." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? Do you recall signing anything recently? Any paperwork she might have asked you to look over?" "No, nothing like that." I would have remembered. "And I definitely didn't sign away my house." Marla nodded. "She didn't need your signature. If the house was originally titled solely in her name, she could transfer it unilaterally." "But," I stammered, "it wasn't. I thought it was both of ours." Marla looked at me gently but firmly. "Did you ever verify that, like really verify? Title, ownership, how it was filed at closing?" I leaned back, trying to remember. Claire had handled most of the paperwork. I was there, of course. I signed the loan, paid the down payment from my account. But when it came to the paperwork shuffle, she'd insisted it was under control. "It's just boring legal stuff," she'd said. "Don't stress, babe." Now I was stressed. Marla sighed. "Look, it's a common move. One spouse transfers assets, usually to a relative, right before initiating a divorce. That way it doesn't show up as part of the marital estate. Makes it harder to split during proceedings. But that's fraud, right?" "It's shady," she said, "but technically legal. Unless you can prove the transfer was made in bad faith, as an intentional attempt to hide assets from the division process. That's a higher bar." I stared at the monitor, still seeing Haley's name. Haley, who'd once borrowed my truck for a weekend, and returned it with a dent in the bumper. Haley, who'd never held a steady job for more than 6 months. Haley, who Claire had always described as a little messy but family, and now she owned my house? I felt like a fool. All those nights I'd spent painting walls, fixing gutters, budgeting for the new HVAC. All of it had been for someone else's property now. "I paid for everything," I muttered. "Mortgage, taxes, furniture. She didn't even know how to use the lawnmower." "I know it feels awful," Marla said. "But don't panic yet. There may still be options. We'll file for discovery. Get full financial disclosures. If we can prove Claire moved assets deliberately to avoid division, the court can consider that. Judges don't like games." I exhaled slowly, trying to ground myself. The betrayal was sharp, but I wasn't going to lose control. I wasn't going to spiral. Claire may have blindsided me, but I still had the law on my side. Maybe. "I want to do this right," I said. "No yelling, no threats. I just want what's fair. Marla gave me a small, approving nod. Good. That'll help you in the long run. Stay calm, stay professional, and let me do the digging. We finished the consult with a plan. File our own financial motions, subpoena property records, review any suspicious transfers. Marla said she'd seen plenty of spouses try to play clever, only to have it backfire once a judge got involved. But still, as I walked out of her office and into the Georgia heat, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. Claire hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She'd planned this, calculated it, and now, I had to figure out what else she was hiding. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they handle a family barbecue. Haley McConnell, Claire's older sister, was the kind of guest who showed up 2 hours late, brought nothing, and left with Tupperware. I'd seen it more than once. Claire always brushed it off, that's just Haley being Haley. But I'd always had a quiet radar for people who took more than they gave. She was 35, 3 years older than Claire, and had cycled through more career reinventions than I could count. Wedding planner, life coach, Etsy seller, wellness consultant, all short-lived ventures, all usually ending in debt, drama, or a Facebook post about how the world just didn't understand her. Haley had been married twice, once to a guy who flipped motorcycles, and once to a yoga teacher who disappeared to Costa Rica with her laptop. Neither lasted. Neither ended well. At family gatherings, she always had this air of vague superiority, like she was meant for better things but life just hadn't caught up yet. She wasn't unkind exactly, just dismissive. When I tried to talk about work or something I'd built around the house, she'd smile politely and scroll her phone. Once, when I mentioned Claire and I were thinking about trying for a baby, she said, "Don't rush into kids. They ruin everything unless you're rich." Then she took a sip of rose and turned to Claire like I wasn't even there. Still, I never thought she'd be the one holding the deed to my home. After my meeting with Marla, I couldn't stop thinking about Haley. Why her? Why not a cousin, or a trust? What role was she playing in this? Instinct said she wasn't just doing Claire a favor. There had to be something in it for her. I called Marla the next morning. "Can we look into Haley's finances?" I asked. "I have a feeling she's not exactly solvent." Marla didn't ask why. "Give me 24 hours, she said. She got back to me that evening, and her tone told me everything before she even started speaking. "Haley is, to put it plainly, underwater." "How bad?" I asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. "She has at least 3 open credit card lawsuits in the state of Georgia, totaling over $18,000. She's also behind on taxes, both federal and local, and she has an active lien from a private lender who issued her a secured loan." "Secured how?" Marla hesitated. "That's where it gets interesting. The loan is structured as a high-risk personal note, but the creditor included a clause allowing for immediate lien placement on any assets Haley acquires over $10,000 in value. Real estate included." I rubbed my forehead. "So if she suddenly becomes the owner of a house, the creditor can legally place a claim against it. And in fact," Marla added, "they've already filed a motion to do exactly that. It was submitted to the court 2 days ago." I sat in silence. Claire had given the house to a woman with a financial record like Swiss cheese, and now one of Haley's sharks was circling what used to be our home. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "Claire transfers the house to Haley to protect it from the divorce. But because Haley's drowning in debt, she's dragged the house into her mess. A creditor might actually take it?" "Exactly. Claire didn't shield the house," Marla said. "She threw it into the middle of a storm. It's not protection. It's exposure." I let out a bitter laugh. "Wow. That's poetic." It was like watching someone hide their jewelry in a burning building, and feeling proud they'd outsmarted the burglars. But the more I thought about it, the more something clicked in my gut. Claire was strategic. She knew how to make things look casual, but she planned carefully. If she picked Haley, she had to know Haley's finances were a disaster. She had to know this was risky, which left 2 possibilities. Either she was desperate, rushed into this plan without thinking through the consequences, or she did think it through, and didn't care what happened to the house as long as it didn't go to me. I didn't know which was worse. Marla's voice cut through my thoughts. We may be able to use this. If the asset transfer results in harm, if Claire's move jeopardizes the value or function of the property, a judge could reverse the deed or demand restitution. It's not guaranteed, but it strengthens your case. I nodded slowly. Good. Let's do it by the book. But privately, I was already turning over another idea. If Haley's ownership made the house vulnerable, maybe I could use that. Not out of revenge, out of leverage. Claire wanted to play games? Fine. I'd play defense. Smart, legal, calm. But I wasn't letting them bury me. Not without a fight. I didn't want to do it. But I also didn't want to be the guy who watched his life get stolen piece by piece because he was too nice to fight back. So, I pulled the trigger. Not literally, of course. I just printed out a few pages from the county property database. The updated deed showing Haley McConnell as the official owner of the house, at 414 Oak Hill Drive, and dropped them, along with a short anonymous note, into a plain manila envelope. The note read, "You might be interested in this. New asset under Haley McConnell's name. Thought you'd want to know. No return address. No fingerprints. Just a walk to a blue mailbox a few neighborhoods over, and a very calm latte on my way home. It took about 3 weeks. The storm didn't arrive as thunder. It came as a sharp letter from a law office in Atlanta, sent to Haley's registered address, which, hilariously, was still our house. Claire had picked it up from the mailbox and opened it like it was another Amazon return. She screamed. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard it. This raw, guttural noise like someone had slammed her hand in a car door. I turned. Everything okay? She was white as drywall, eyes wide, letter shaking in her hand. They're putting a lien on the house. What house? The house. Our house. They're saying Haley owes them money and they're coming for it. They can't do that. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't she, own it now? Claire looked at me like I'd grown horns. This isn't funny, Toby. I shrugged. Didn't say it was. She paced. Called Haley. Voicemail. Then she stormed upstairs, muttering something about lawyers and what the actual hell. I took my coffee and stepped outside, breathing in the quiet, the way a man does when he knows the tide has finally turned. Haley tried to fix it, of course. She showed up 2 days later, in a wrinkled blazer and messy bun, waving legal printouts and yelling on speakerphone with someone she called my guy. I didn't ask who that was. Honestly, I didn't care. Within days it was official. The creditor had filed a motion to place a claim against the property. A legal process was underway, and now Claire was dealing with the very fallout she thought she had so cleverly avoided. And me? I played dumb, kept my voice calm, acted like I was just as surprised as anyone. On a Wednesday evening, Claire cornered me in the living room. Her eyes were red, her jaw locked. Did you do this? I blinked. Do what? Don't play stupid, Toby. Did you give them the deed? Did you tell them about the transfer? I sipped my water. Claire, you transferred the house to someone with active debt and legal claims against her. I think the situation kind of created itself. She stared at me, her nostrils flaring. You know what this is? This is low. This is beneath you. I thought you were the kind of man who didn't stoop. That made me laugh. Not loudly. Just one of those soft, incredulous chuckles that comes out when someone you love turns into a cartoon villain. Beneath me? I said. Claire, you tried to leave me with nothing. You tried to erase 5 years of work, payments, repairs, savings, and stick me with a handshake and a court summons. And now that your genius move backfired, I'm the villain? You know I did what I had to do. No, I said. Quieter now. You did what you wanted to do. You wanted out, and you wanted to keep the prize. So you played me. And you used your sister, your unstable, debt-ridden sister, to pull it off. She opened her mouth. But I raised a hand. Thing is, Claire, you weren't careful. You thought you were smarter than the system. But you forgot one thing. People like Haley can't hide. Not forever. Debt collectors don't care about your schemes, they just want their money. Her face fell. And me? I added. I'm just the guy who used to live here. She looked stunned, like she'd expected me to yell, to cry, to fight her tooth and nail. But the truth was, I didn't need to, because the moment she handed that deed to her sister, she'd handed me the match, and I'd simply let it burn. She turned without a word and went upstairs. I sat on the couch, drank the rest of my water, and stared at the front door for a long time. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief, like I'd finally stopped drowning in someone else's storm. Haley called me on a Monday afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, then texted, "Can we talk? It's about the house. It doesn't have to end like this." I stared at the screen for a while. Then, against my better judgment, I called her back. "Toby," she said, like we were old friends, like she hadn't helped her sister screw me over. "I'm listening," I replied flatly. "Look," she began. "I know this whole thing got messy. It was Claire's idea, okay? I just agreed to help. I didn't think it would come to this." "To what? Legal repossession?" I asked. "Because I did," she exhaled sharply. "You've made your point. I get it. But we can still fix it. I'll sign the house back over to you, or split the value, whatever. Just stop the process before it's too late. If the house goes to auction, nobody wins." I laughed. Dry, cold. "Nobody? You mean you?" "Toby, come on," she said, dropping the sweet tone. "I'm offering you a way out. A chance to reclaim something here. But that's the thing. I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want to rescue a house that had become a battleground. I didn't want to reclaim anything tied to Claire, her manipulation, or the lies layered into the foundation of that place. I didn't even want the couch we picked out together. Every thread of it felt poisoned now. "I'm not interested," I said. There was a pause. "You'd really rather let it burn?" "No," I said. "I'm just done pretending it's still a home." She hung up, and with that, I knew the last bridge was gone. That night, I sat in what used to be our living room and let the silence settle around me. It was amazing how loud peace could be. Funny how quiet things had gotten without Claire in the house. No passive-aggressive sighs when I worked late. No slamming drawers. No cold shoulders because I didn't read her mind or make her feel like a priority after 12-hour days at the office. She used to accuse me of being distant, cold, but all I ever did was try to keep us afloat. I remembered the way she used to start fights over nothing, over my tone when I said good morning, or the way I folded towels. One night I came home exhausted after covering for 2 coworkers who were out sick. She looked up from the couch and said, "Wow, guess I know where I rank on your priority list." I'd apologized, like an idiot, because back then, I still thought love was about fixing things, about bending until you both fit. I didn't realize I was the only one bending. And then there was the insurance thing. 3 years ago, Claire pushed hard for us to get comprehensive homeowners insurance. Said it was smart, responsible, grown-up stuff. I agreed. We signed the paperwork together. 2 months later, I got a random feeling and checked the policy. My name had been removed as a CO insured. I confronted her. She said, "It's just easier with one name. Less paperwork." I bought it. I wanted to believe it. That was the moment I should have seen what kind of game I was playing. But love, or something like it, makes you blind in ways logic never can. Looking back, I realize now I was never a partner in our marriage. I was a resource, a support beam, something stable for her to stand on while she climbed. And when she didn't need the beam anymore, or found a shinier one, she tried to tear me out without a second thought. But now she could have the wreckage. I didn't need the house. I didn't want the memories. Let them sell it. Let the court divide it. Let Claire explain to everyone how her genius plan turned to ash. All I wanted was the next clean step forward. Courtrooms are strange places. The chairs are hard. The lights are too bright. And time moves like molasses. But that morning, sitting in the family court downtown, I felt more clarity than I had in months. Claire sat across the aisle from me, dressed like she was going to brunch with someone important. Flawless hair, tasteful heels, a soft pastel blazer. A performance, through and through. She barely glanced at me. Her lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit, oozed confidence as he stood up. "Your Honor," he began. My client seeks equitable compensation for the marital assets, including a portion of Mr. Harper's savings and any projected gains from future property or business investments. Future property? I almost laughed. But I kept my face neutral. I had my own lawyer, a sharp gray-haired woman named Miss Lansing, and she didn't even blink. Your Honor, she said, the matter of property has already been complicated by Miss Harper's unilateral transfer of the marital home into the name of a third party, her sister, just weeks prior to filing for divorce. The judge, a tired-looking man with reading glasses and a worn expression, raised an eyebrow. To clarify, he said, adjusting his glasses, Mrs. Harper transferred full ownership of the home to her sister before she filed? Claire's lawyer cleared his throat. Temporarily. For financial structuring purposes. Miss Lansing cut in. There is no indication the transfer was temporary, Your Honor, and the sister in question has a long-standing history of debt. The move appears to have been made in an attempt to shield the asset from marital division. The judge turned his gaze to Claire. Is this accurate? Claire stood. I didn't mean to deceive anyone. I thought it would be safer if the house wasn't caught in the divorce. But it is the marital home, correct? The judge pressed. You both lived there? Yes, she admitted. And Mr. Harper contributed financially to the mortgage, renovations, and upkeep? Yes, she said again, voice smaller this time. The judge nodded slowly. Then I'm afraid your reasoning doesn't hold. He leaned back in his chair and continued. By transferring the property out of joint ownership before initiating divorce proceedings, and without your spouse's knowledge or consent, you relinquished your claim to it under standard equitable distribution. That was your decision, not Mr. Harper's. You cannot now seek compensation for an asset you willingly discarded. Claire's face was blank. But I could see the twitch in her jaw. The tell. Her lawyer tried to salvage it. Then, at the very least, my client is entitled to a share of Mr. Harper's savings and projected business equity. Miss Lansing stood again. Your Honor, the accounts in question are demonstrably separate and predate the marriage. Furthermore, there is no shared business. Mr. Harper is an employee, not an owner. There is no equity to divide. The judge exhaled through his nose. In light of the evidence, and the petitioner's own financial decisions, I see no basis for awarding further compensation. He looked at me. Mr. Harper, your legal fees and filing costs will be reimbursed by the petitioner. Claire's head snapped toward him. What? That's not fair. The judge didn't flinch. Mrs. Harper, you attempted to manipulate marital asset distribution. That is not only unfair, it's unethical. And just like that, it was done. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. The house was gone. The creditor had taken possession the week before, after a swift ruling in their favor. Haley never even showed up to fight it. Probably too broke to hire counsel. As for Claire, she stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. I didn't chase her. Didn't call her name. Didn't feel the need to say one more word. I had spent 5 years believing in something that wasn't real. A marriage where I thought we were building a life, when in truth, I was just building a stage for her to stand on. And when the spotlight wasn't bright enough, she tried to tear down the set. But now? Now the stage was gone. The lights were off. And I was free. I walked to my car with a strange kind of smile. Not the gloating kind. The kind that comes from surviving something you thought would destroy you, and realizing you're stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for. Courtroom and karma. Turns out, they're closer than people think. You know what's funny? I feel lighter. There's something about packing your life into boxes, signing a lease and moving out of the house that was once your home, or at least what you thought was your home, that lifts a weight you didn't even realize you were carrying. The new place is small, just a one-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes from downtown Atlanta. Nothing fancy, but clean, with big windows that let the sunlight pour in. I'm sitting on the couch right now, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and honestly, it feels good. Maybe it's the fresh start. Maybe it's the fact that I'm no longer tangled in Claire's mess, or Haley's for that matter, or maybe it's just that finally, after months of shock and confusion and heartbreak, I'm free. My old friends have been a solid rock through all this. Mike, my college roommate, called me the day after the court ruling. "Dude, you did good," he said, voice steady and sincere. "You stood your ground." Julie, from work, dropped by with a homemade lasagna and a six-pack. "You deserve better than that drama," she said, giving me a hug that felt like a lifeline. Even though I felt wiped out, I realized I wasn't alone. That made all the difference. And then there was Jenna. Jenna and I go way back, college days, when life was simpler, and our biggest worries were exams and finding good coffee. We'd lost touch over the years, but she'd popped up on my Facebook a few months ago, and we'd exchanged a couple of messages. When I moved into the apartment, she was the first person to text me. "Hey, if you need a break from unpacking, coffee's on me." I didn't hesitate. We met at a small cafe down the street, the kind with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh pastries in the air. Jenna smiled like she hadn't a care in the world, warm, genuine, the kind of person who makes you feel like everything will be okay just by sitting next to her. "I've missed this," I admitted as we sipped our drinks. "Yeah," she said. "Sometimes it's the little things that save us." She didn't ask about Claire, didn't push me to spill the messy details, just listened when I talked about work, about the future, or really the lack of any clear plan. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled without forcing it. I'm not saying everything is perfect. There are nights when the silence of this apartment feels deafening. Nights when I catch myself looking at my phone, half expecting a text from Claire, half hoping she'll just go away forever. But the difference now is I'm not waiting for her. I'm not holding my breath for a version of us that never really existed. Instead, I'm taking it day by day, one step at a time. Tomorrow? Who knows? Maybe Jenna and I will meet again for coffee. Maybe I'll finally sign up for that cooking class I've been putting off. Maybe I'll meet someone who sees me for who I am, not the guy tangled in a messy divorce, but just Toby. Because here's the thing, endings aren't always tragic. Sometimes they're just new beginnings disguised as goodbyes. And if I've learned anything in the last few months, it's that there's a whole life waiting for me out there. So yeah, I feel lighter, and for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to what's next. Looking back, I have to admit, I'm partly to blame. I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people, too focused on keeping the peace to notice the red flags waving right in front of me. That's the thing about schemes though. They only work as long as everyone involved thinks the others are dumb enough to fall for it. Claire thought I was too kind-hearted to see through her act. Haley thought I was too naive to actually fight back. They underestimated me. And maybe that was their biggest mistake. Because sometimes, it's not about being the smartest or the most cunning. It's about refusing to be the fool. I lost the house, sure. But honestly, that place wasn't a home. It was a cage. A gilded prison, made of lies and half-truths. Now, without the walls closing in, I can breathe. I'm free. And that's worth more than any mortgage or deed ever could be. Sometimes, losing something makes room for everything you really need.